James chapter 3. James 3. You think about a new year, and maybe you're thinking about things you want to do or goals you have or things you want to change, or maybe that car you hope to pay off, or that bill, or maybe it's a new skill you want, a hobby, maybe you want to learn an instrument, whatever it might be. You think about, you want to, it kind of gives you a clean slate, kind of sometimes makes you feel like you got a do-over. You know, maybe I made some mistakes last year, or in my life I've not done things always the right way, or maybe I've made some misjudgments, but boy, this year I want to do it better. So the title this morning will be this: How to be Wise in 2025. How to be wise in 2025. God, through James, is going to give us some instruction on how to be wise. So I hope you take some notes, and what I hope is that when you see these things mentioned, that it encourages you that, hey, I've already been doing these things. And you know what? This is already part of my life. Not that I am perfect and I do everything perfectly, but you know what? These are already a regular part of my life, my attitude, my thoughts, my actions. And if they're not, there's no reason why this can't be, because God is powerful enough. The only question is, will you allow Him to produce these things in your life? So, how to be wise in 2025. Look at verse 13. James 3, verse 13. We read here, he says, "Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom." All right? So, the word wise here, it means skilled. It means learned. Okay? That's what it means. The word understanding here, it means intelligent. It means experienced. It can be used as one having the knowledge of an expert. All right? So he says wise and understanding, who is skilled and experienced in using this. MacArthur described it as a specialist who could skillfully apply his expertise to practical situations. All right? So wise, he just says, hey, you know how to do some things in your life and run your life and live your life as a wise person. This word is only found here in the New Testament, but it is found in a few other places in the Greek translation of the Old Testament. And I want us to see this to get a little broader idea of it. Deuteronomy 1:13 says this: "Choose wise and discerning and experienced men from your tribes, and I will appoint them as" what? Your heads. Because when you look at leaders, he doesn't say, show me the charismatic. Show me the one who can't shut up and wants to speak the most. Show me the one who thinks they're the smartest. What he says is, look for those that are wise, discerning, and experienced. And those that everyone agrees, yep, they are. It's not, hey, I'm here, I'm the guy. He says, you look and you promote those who you think have these characteristics. That's what you want to see. It can be a very dangerous thing when someone wants leadership. What you hope to happen is that people thrust it upon others, saying, hey, no, you deserve to be the leader. I know you don't want to be, and that's a good characteristic, because you feel the responsibility, and you don't necessarily want to be the boss of everybody. But we know you'll do a good job. You have wisdom and understanding and are discerning. All right? So a person who exhibits, so think about this for your moment as well. When we think about James 3:13, when he says, who among you is wise and understanding, it is not just, I'm wise and understanding, I'm benefit for myself. In the Old Testament, we see, you know what, God wants to use those qualities that a godly person has to be the benefit of others. So it is not just for you and your life, But God wants to use you to be a blessing to others as well. Hopefully to your immediate family, but then also to your church family. That as a body, the body is blessed because people in the body are wise, are understanding, are discerning. All right? How would you know a person has these traits? Because it is an inside trait. Well, because what's on the inside shows up on the outside. So you can tell by, usually, you can tell by people's actions that, hey, that person exhibits wisdom. You ever notice they don't just shoot off their mouth whenever? You notice they don't maybe make a promise before they've thought it carefully or said, hey, I'll try or I'll see. They don't say yes because their word means that much to them that when they say yes, they're going to do all they can to make sure they do that thing. Right? My wife sometimes will get irritated with me. She'll say, hey, can we do this? Or I'm like, well, let me think about it. Well, just tell me yes or no. Well, then the answer is no. Because I don't know you. I need to think about this, really examine. I don't want to just do things off the cuff, right? Hopefully that's you in your life. You've realized over time, I need to think through some things sometimes. Because maybe my mouth or my intentions want to do something that I actually can't pull off or can't do or is going to interfere with something else, right? The word is used in Isaiah as well, but it is also used as a warning. Isaiah 5:21 says this, woe to those who are wise. Why are you, woe to, that doesn't make any, we're just told to be wise. What's the difference? What does the Bible say? Wise how? In their own eyes. Again, everyone else is not saying they're wise. They say, I'm wise. I know it all. And clever in their own sight. Woe to those who are heroes in drinking wine and valiant men in mixing strong drink. Those that are wise in their own eyes, he puts them in the same category as those who get drunk, who think, I'm great. That shows what a strong man or woman I am, that I can hold my liquor and no wisdom there. Who else? What do they do? They justify the wicked for a bribe. And they take away the rights of the ones who are in the right. So they show favoritism for the one that can give them some kickbacks. Therefore, as a tongue of fire consumes stubble, and dry grass collapses into the flame, so their root will become like rods, and their blossom will blow away as dust. For they have rejected the law of the Lord of hosts, and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. Now, this is interesting because not just the wise part, but these other characteristics we saw in Isaiah, James is going to mention here in the book of James. So there's some other things where you can say, you're not wise, you're not a person having wisdom if you exhibit some of these other characteristics. So it says you need to have, who's wise and understanding, James 3:13. Let him show by his good behavior his deeds. How? It's not just that you have it, it's how you use it. So he says here, you use it in the gentleness of wisdom. Gentleness is, maybe you've heard that meekness before, like it's power under control. It's like controlling a horse with a bridle. Right? It doesn't mean it's weak, it just means it's under control. So gentleness, power under control, and powerful control of wisdom. You think about people that might say they have wisdom. They might not actually have it, but those that Isaiah said have wisdom in their own sight, those are the people who are probably, you would see a lot of times saying, I have wisdom, I'm smart, you need to obey me, listen to me. You ever gone across those people like that? Maybe in home, maybe friends, maybe in business, where they think, I'm right, and they kind of use the bully pulpit. That's why he says here, control wisdom. It's not, I know everything, and you all need to know how much I know. It is, when it needs to be applied, I'll apply it. And I'll let you know I got wisdom. But it is not being a bully or being harsh in it. It is having it under control. And a wise person has everything in their life under control the majority of the time, right? So here's the question. If you believe you do have wisdom, do you control your wisdom? Is it under control? Or another question could be, does godly wisdom control you? Does godly wisdom control you? Not just has God given it to you, do you have it? Are you practicing it in your life? Have you built it up over time? But then does it control you? Because wisdom does control you. It controls your actions. When you say I have wisdom, but you don't control your actions, well, then you really don't. You might have some head knowledge, right, of some things and say, oh, I can know how to apply this in this situation or that situation. But when you fly out the handle, and when you have no control over things, that is not a good thing. So if you got wisdom, you control it. That's a sign you actually do have wisdom. Look at verse 14. But if you have bitter jealousy, so you're jealous of people, and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth. Now previously, if you remember a few weeks back, early in the chapter, we learned about bitter water and fresh water, how they do not come from the same source. Now James describes jealousy as bitter. This means a harsh attitude towards others. They want what others have, and they are bitter that they don't have it. How dare God bless them? I deserve that. It's not just I want this, but they don't deserve it. Is that part of your life? Do you rejoice when people are seemingly blessed? Or do you have that jealousy that says, how dare I do everything right? I make so many sacrifices. I honor the Lord. Why are they prospering? You know what? When you're bitter because of what others have, it leads to selfish ambition. You notice he doesn't say ambition. Nothing wrong with wanting to be ambitious about something, right? If you say, hey, I've got ambition, I want to grow, maybe you got some cattle, I want to grow my cattle this year. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Hey, I have a plot of land, and I want to grow things on it. Well, that's a good ambition, right? But he says there could be a selfish ambition. That means contention. It means strife. It is described in other writings as a self-seeking pursuit of political office by unfair means. So if you want a picture of what this means, picture a politician who will do whatever it takes to get elected. That's the thought here. Is it a wrong thing to be in political office? No. We would hope we would have godly people with godly wisdom in office. And yet what do so many seem to, they want office because they want influence, power, and money, right? Selfish ambition. It seems that even the higher you go in government, the less likely it is that someone is there without selfish ambition. Or you notice sometimes it seems like, man, they were really good. Seems like now they get and they play the game and they know what they can. Selfish ambition kind of creeps in their heart, and now they're playing the political game. Right? We see that in politics. That's what he's talking about here, that picture. Selfish ambition leads them to do whatever it takes to gain their goal. For them, the ends justify the means. Well, I'm going to do good over there, and this is going to be a beneficial. Therefore, however I get there doesn't matter because I'm going to do good when it gets there. That thing, then I'm going to really be a blessing to others. I'm going to do this or that. We'll be able to do. So I will cut corners. I will make compromises. I will do things because I have to have this. That's what he's saying here. That attitude should not be present in the church. But quite often it is. Even in the early church. 1 Corinthians 3:2 says this. Paul says, I gave you milk to drink, not solid food, for you were not able to receive it. Indeed, even now you are not yet able, for you are still fleshly. Why? For since there is jealousy and strife among you, are you not fleshly And are you not walking like who? Mere men. The natural man. You're walking like the pagans, like everybody else. That is not God's goal for us. When you become His child, He transforms us and He expects us, we are justified in the moment. But over time, He expects us to be more and more sanctified. That means ourselves of sinful things in our lives, so we are more of a useful tool for Him. Sanctification is that cleansing of that tool to be used in worship, like in the temple or the tabernacle. That's what sanctified is a picture of. That's what He wants for us. James tells us where this type of wisdom and thinking comes from. So when you think, well, how can I be on the lookout for this? He gives us 3 categories. All right? Look at verse 15 and 16. This wisdom is not that which comes down from above. He says that wisdom is not from God. God is not here about, hey, get what you can, however it takes. As long as you are accomplishing, that's all that matters. No, that's not God at all. He says it's not from above, but it is, say it with me, earthly, natural, demonic. All right? Earthly, natural, demonic. Let's break it down. Earthly, from the earthly system, for how our society normally operates. We live in a fallen world, right? And a world who does not possess godly wisdom. Therefore, that is why they operate the way they do. Because their mind already, we just got to make your living however you can. Got to make things happen however you can, right? That's the worldly thinking. If your thinking resembles the thinking of those all around us in the world, it's not godly wisdom. So how about you don't compare what you have, your possessions? Maybe not even for right now, compare your actions. But for those around you, compare your thought process, your thinking. You know what? That's an unbeliever in my life, and his thought process is the same as mine. That's not good. Because God says that my thought process is supposed to be your thought process. You're supposed to be seeing things through my eyes through an eternal perspective, a holy perspective. So if you think about everything, I'm not talking about we both love the same sport. But you know what I'm talking about. That mindset of yours. It should be different from unbelievers that you know in your life. Doesn't mean you're better than them or look down on them, but it does mean we're different. Our priorities, the way that we think about things, they are different. And that is not a sign that I'm special. It's a sign that God has done a work in me. Because if not for God, I would be thinking the same way. So he says, it comes from this earthly, worldly system. Number 2, it comes from nature, natural, from our flesh. It is those desires that belong to every man and woman. It is what we're born with and we're just stuck with. All right? It's just there. You think about this. We experience this from time to time with a little grace here at church when people come to our house. So we had some people at our house a little while back, and we had dinner with them, and some little girls were playing with her toys, and guess what? The one toy the little girl's playing with, that's the toy she wants. Why? Because she didn't have any, she needs to learn to share. And Julia's much older, so they don't play with the same toys, so she doesn't have to share very much. So when she does, we need to learn to share. It's a new concept, I know. We got to learn. Why? Is it because she's a bad, horrible little person? Yes. No. It's because she's natural, right? That's the natural response of kids. You don't have to teach kids how to be selfish. You don't have to teach them to say, mine. What you have to do is teach them to say, here you go. We'll share and take turns. Or you're playing with that first, so I'll wait. I've never seen a kid just naturally say, they had it first, I'll just wait. What you usually see is, I want to play with that. That looks, you are having fun with that toy. I want that toy. And guess what? It's my toy, my house, I get to have it. Or if it's in the nursery, it's no one's toy, it's the church's toy. Yet I want it because I want that toy, right? It's natural. That stuff comes from our inside of us. You know, we have desire naturally to be intimate with a man or a woman. That is a natural desire given by God. But we have to learn to give ourselves to our spouse. So God says intimacy is for a husband and wife. The bed is not defiled, but that's the bedroom and for a husband and wife. You made that commitment, right? So there are natural desires that can be used in good ways to honor the Lord and also in selfish and bad ways. So it comes from the natural, right? You also think in the marriage realm. When you think about the natural, we are commanded to give ourselves to our spouse. Men, we're commanded to sacrificially give ourselves to our wives, to lay down our lives for them, literally and figuratively. Put them first. Wives, they are called to do something a little bit different, to humble themselves and put themselves under the submission of their husbands, under the leadership of their husbands. Both those things are not natural. It's just not. And so God says, hey, do the unnatural thing that will honor me. Because naturally what you want to do is the husband wants to say, I'm bigger and stronger, and you do what I say or there's consequences. And in other societies, hey, if I want to marry another woman, or third or fourth or fifth, you're just cattle. I'll get rid of you. I'll find another one. Because maybe I have some wealth or I have some power. Therefore, you're helpless. That's what God says. That is not the way it goes. Our nature would say, do that. Or a woman might say, my nature is to boss you around, and to treat you like a child, and tell you how it is. But God says, no, the husband is the head of the home. And part of the curse of the fall is for you to look at that and say, we need to be equals. Well, the majority of the time we are. Hopefully in your home, you are equal. But under God, the husband has the final say, the final authority. That's just how it is. Naturally, wives, it is easier for me to tell you what God says than for me to tell you how to actually do it. That's a living thing out, and that can be hard. But when you're submitted to God, it becomes easier. When you're both submitted to God, it becomes much easier. Much, much easier. When one or both are out of the will of God, not submitted to God, not close with God, all hell breaks loose. It's a lot harder to live in that harmony because our natural flesh says, no way. Ain't no way. Or you can say like my wife, I'm the head, and what does she say? She's the neck, and she can turn the head wherever she wants it to go. Right? Another that's a good, that may be a good way to look at it, right? But I'm still the man in the house. But that's my wife's permission. All right? There are good desires that come from God, that come from within our natural man, natural woman, but they must be put into subjection to God's instructions and God's commands. So that's part of that wisdom he's talking about. Number 3, demonic. That means from Satan. What is Satan's goal? To hurt God. And Satan does everything he can to hurt God. How can he hurt God? By leading men and women away from God and to fight against God. That's how he can hurt God. God's greatest creation, the one he wants to have a relationship with him, if Satan can turn those against God, that's the only way Satan can possibly hurt God, inflict some sort of pain or whatever, however you want to describe it about God. Because God loves us that much. False religions all over the world, they are tools of Satan to fight against God. You know, the thought that, what I produce determines my value. That is an earthly thought. It is natural, it is fleshly, and it's also demonic. Where you see men who kill themselves because they lost a job, or they can no longer produce like they once could. Or you see women or somebody, hey, I have this thing I want to do and I can't do it, therefore I have no value. I have no worth. I'm worthless. That's what Satan does. That's what a worldly ideas and worldly mindset from Satan does to us. It also works together to fool people into listen to me on this. Fools people into wasting their lives on earth and not realizing that they've wasted their entire life until they suddenly stand before God and give account of their lives. My whole life, I produced, and I thought that was the most important thing. And so my position in this world, in my company, in my bank account is what mattered the most. This thing or that thing or this hobby or this way I saw myself and I pursued it my whole life. And then when I stand before God, God says, you wasted your entire life. It meant absolutely nothing. Hear me on this. Is that a bad thing to have ambition in this world and want to produce something? No. But it is a bad thing when you see that. That's your worth. That's your value. That's your goal. That's all that you're ever going to do in this life. And you waste your life. You stand before God and give account and realize, I am a fool. I live my life like a fool. Don't do that. This wisdom here mentioned pursues things that are worth something for eternity. The foolish, without that wisdom, it leads them to waste their most precious commodity, time. We can never get back time. That wisdom, that worldly wisdom that I need to produce and that gives me value, that also leads to never, ever, ever being satisfied. Because you will always need to produce more. And then when you can't produce, when you're older and you can't quite do what you once did, why are you depressed? Because my whole value was on this. And if I can't do that, then I'm worthless. If you want to avoid that worldly wisdom, that fleshly wisdom, that demonic wisdom, look at the next verse, look at verse 17. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without what? Hypocrisy. If you want godly wisdom, maybe that's an abstract thing. How can I know I have wisdom? He gives you some things to look for. Some markers that say, you know what? You might think you actually don't have godly wisdom, but if these are parts of your life that other people would say, that's a part of your life, that you actually do have wisdom. Here's some things to take note of and see. Maybe even try to imagine and put yourself, hey, this category, am I a 1, a 2, am I a 10? Like, how well am I doing in this? Pure. That means without pollution. It means clean. It is also pure in our attitudes and our motives. It is not just pure from what others see. Hey, my pastor looks like a pretty good guy. He's up here in front of us Sunday mornings and he's teaching us God's word. He must be a pretty good guy. It's not enough. What you need to see is my pastor pure throughout the week? When I see him, when I don't. What does his family think of him when they're around him all the time? That pure, it is not just pure in what others see. It is pure in what motivates you and I. What motivates you? Are you pure in that? My motivation is to honor the Lord. And honor the Lord, it doesn't mean sit here on church 24/7. What it means is I'm going to work hard at my job and I'm going to pursue and I'm going to have ambition. But all my worth isn't tied up in that. I'm going to work hard and try to do my best and ask God, God bless it as I put you first in my life. What it means is my motivation is to love my wife well. To get something from her? No. Hopefully that's a good byproduct of it. She wants to give to you as well. But my job as a man, as a husband, is just to love my wife. If I don't get it back, that stinks. It doesn't change the fact that my job is to love my wife. Pure in your motives that, hey, I want to help somebody. I don't help the person who can just give back. I'm also have the same amount of help or concern for the person that will just take from me but can't give anything back. It's not that they're intentional about that. It's that they can't, and I can help them. I'm just going to help them because I want to, because I want to be a blessing. Pure. Peaceable. That means free from the havoc of pursuing. It means harmony. It means rest from unnecessary conflict. It means loving peace. And if you think everyone loves peace, you're wrong. You also don't know very many people. Because I've come across quite a few people that seem to love catastrophe and calamity in their lives. It's almost like they're allergic to peace. Because they're unwilling to do anything in their life to create peace in their life. Y'all come across somebody like that? I'm not talking about one instance. It's about everything in their life has always got to be hard. You love peace. You look for ways to experience peace. That's peace. What about gentle? That word, it means equitable, it means fair, and it means moderation. Barclay, he says this about it. He says, the man who is apikis, this Greek word, is the man who knows what is actually wrong, when it is actually wrong to apply the strict letter of the law. We'll see this in our lives, but especially if you're a parent, you realize you learn this. Hopefully you learn this along the way sometime, right? He says, he knows how to forgive when strict justice gives him a perfect right to condemn. He says it is almost impossible to find an English word to translate this quality. He said Matthew Arnold called it sweet reasonableness. And it is the ability to extend to others the kindly consideration we would wish to receive ourselves. So responding to others how you wish to be treated may be a good summation of this term. It is when your child deserves the rod of discipline. And maybe you spare that rod and give them something less severe because maybe you already see contrition. Or, I'm not saying you're being weak, but you're saying, you know what? I don't think that's needed this time. I think if I show mercy, that will still communicate you need to do right. It will also communicate I love you and I expect better. Right? Show of hands, any of you ever not giving your children all that they deserved? We talks about discipline. Anyone? Anyone withheld? No one. Miss Trish, you're the only one. Everyone else is always giving them severe. Anyone else? Giving your children mercy ever at all? Or the strict letter law that says I need to beat you 5 times, means I beat you 5 times every time. You know, no, Miss Rosetta, then raise your hand. Okay, then you have, okay. So 2 people. The rest of you, strict letter of the law all the time. Okay. You poor kids. I'm sorry, Miss Shaylin. No, that's what he's talking about. God doesn't do that to us. When you sin, does God bring down his wrath upon you? I don't think so. I can tell you this. When I sin, he doesn't bring down his wrath upon me. I deserve it. You know how offensive my sin is to him? Yet he just is patient and merciful and gracious and kind. When we begin to have his wisdom, we treat people like he treats us. Quite often not as we deserve, but as he wants us to be. And with godly wisdom. He also says they're reasonable. That means to be persuaded. Listen, hear me on this, because this sounds a little bit different. Listen, able to be persuaded, it means compliant, it means not stubborn or obstinate, it means opposite of stiff and unbending. Barclay says this, euepathes can mean easy to persuade. All right? So in my mind, when I'm reading this, I'm thinking you're a doormat. He's saying be a doormat. That's not what this word is talking about here. All right? He says, not in the sense of being pliable and weak, because being a doormat is not a good thing. All right? He says, but this word, reasonable, in the sense of not being stubborn and of being willing to listen to reason and to appeal. He says, true wisdom is not rigid, but is willing to listen and, hear me, is skilled in knowing when wisely to yield. It means there are times when you don't need to be rigid. There are times when wisdom would say, give in. I'm not talking about the sin, but talking about, you know what, there are times when I know the exact right thing that needs to be done, and I'm not going to bend on it. We're going to do this. It's going to be right. We have to do this. Scripture is clear. And there are times when, you know what, this would be wrong. We can't do that. And then there is life, when so much of it is gray, and it could say, I see and I apply, and I think we should do this. And then what if my wife says, but what if we did it this way? Or disciplining our children, we did it this way? Because in my heart and my mind, my disposition would be letter of the law. And if I always only did my own thing, I would probably be too heavy-handed in our home. But when my wife gives me wisdom, and you're probably right in that situation. You probably have some intuition and some, you know what? If my mind is turned off, you're the woman, you're the wife, I'm the head of you, shut your mouth, and I will do what needs to be done. Then that'd be a hard time in my home. I'm not saying I always do whatever she says. There are a lot of times when she says, you know what? All right, I wish I would have thought of it and then it wouldn't be so awkward, but yeah, that sounds right. We'll do it that way, right? It is that thinking through and saying, you know what, we can do it this other way. Because sometimes in life, it is not right or wrong. Sometimes it's just different. I'm just going to do it this other way. Okay. What if somebody wants to do something in church? Lee, could we try this? Could we? And I said, well, I've never done it that way. I think we always did it. But could I say, you know what? Let's try it and see. Let's see how God blesses. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. If it does, great. You get all, I'll make sure to take all the credit. But applying that wisdom when you can. And not being rigid. It also says full of mercy. That means compassion. Full of compassion and also good fruit. That is healthy, it is nourishing, it is abundant fruit. You give mercy to others, and you produce fruit that is evident for others to see. Full of mercy and good fruit from that. Unwavering, it means without partiality. Remember in Isaiah when he said, hey, you show partiality to those that can give you a kickback? Woe to you. Here he says this wisdom, it doesn't have partiality. If the member of the church is a big giver or not, no partiality. If that person is your best friend or that person you just met, no partiality, no favorites. It also means without hypocrisy. That means without disguise. What you see is what you get. There's no deception. Moffat said these last two words, without partiality, without hypocrisy, they rule out the habit of using speech to half reveal and half conceal the mind of the speaker, who has something, as we say, at the back of his mind all the time, right? That means that we don't excuse or justify half-truths or half-lies. We are people of integrity. So surely a religious person wouldn't be someone who's found guilty of partiality or hypocrisy, right? You would think so when you have godly wisdom. But when you don't, Matthew 23 shows us. Matthew 23, Jesus says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, a play actor, you wear a mask. For you tithe, they made sure to tithe their mint, their dill, their cumin, and then they have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. But these are the things you should have done without neglecting the others. You should have done it all. You blind guides. You're supposed to lead the people, but you're blind. You strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you clean the outside of the cup and of the dish, but inside you are full of robbery and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisees. First clean the inside of the cup and of the dish. And what happens when the inside's clean? So that the outside of it may become clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful, but inside they are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. So you too outwardly appear righteous to men. You make sure everyone thinks you're righteous, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. You don't keep the law. And the inside, you're disgusting. You're a violator of God's law. David warns us against such men. In Psalm 86, he says, O God, arrogant men have risen up against me, and a band of violent men have sought my life, and they have not set you before them. And then David also gives us the reason why we should produce these characteristics of godly wisdom in our lives. So when you have these wicked men coming against them, he says, but you, O Lord, are a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abundant in loving kindness and truth. So when we display godly wisdom, we will look like our Heavenly Father, and we will produce delicious heavenly fruit. We need to look like God. He expects us to look like Him. Not perfectly, but we need to strive to look like Him. In verse 18, we get our musicians come at this time. Verse 18 says, and the seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace. By who? Those who make peace. Righteousness, or being right with God, is the proper and expected fruit from a life that practices godly wisdom. So this morning, is your wisdom earthly? Is it natural? What just comes naturally to you? And is it demonic? Or is your wisdom from above? God only blesses wisdom that's from above. God resists and He stands against those who practice the wisdom of this world. So my question for you this morning is this. Which wisdom will you live your life by in 2025? Which wisdom will lead your family in this year, in 2025? I'm going to ask you to bow your head this morning. We're going to sing at least a verse softly. I want you to just do business with God, take inventory of your life and say, God, there are some things here that are part of my life. And then God, you know what? There are some things that I think you convicted me of should be more a part of my life, but they're not. God, this year, would you help me and create in me that godly wisdom that others see and that you could use this year? Do business with God this morning as we sing.